So this is part 2 of the Chapter 1 practice test, and it covers sections 1.5 through 1.7. Just like the Chapter 1, just part 1 of this, that covered sections 1.1 through 1.4, the best thing that you could do is complete this practice test before watching the video, and then just kind of check yourself rather than trying to learn to use this as a learning tool. I'm not really doing the same sort of explanations when I do the practice test as when I do the lectures over the sections themselves. So question 24 wants me to find the intersection of the graph of A complement and B, and I'm going to shade in green the A complement, and A complement is every bit of this graph that's outside the A circle. So I'm going to leave the A circle completely white and shaded everything outside the A circle the best I could. And now to this graph, I'm going to intersect it with my graph of B. For intersections, I pull out 2 colors. So I'm shading the entire inside of the B circle. My answer to this problem was where the 2 shadings overlap, because for intersections, you're looking for the regions that have both colored shadings, and I'm using 2 colors. And I think I can do that pretty quickly here. Let me just even pull out this pink color. It looks like this little region right here is the region where both shadings overlap. And this would be the answer to, if I was asked to sketch the region A complement intersection B, and that's the answer to number 24. For 25, I'm asked to sketch the region of A union B intersection C complement. So I need a 3-circle Venn diagram. And because there's no parentheses, I'm just going to work from left to right. I can worry about that complement in a minute. So first thing I'm going to do, in one color pink, show A union B, because unions you can do with one color. To show A union B, first, I'm going to show A by shading in the entire A circle. That's the A part of A union B. Now I'm going to do the B part of A union B by shading in the entire B circle. So this is a picture of A union B. Done with that, so done with the A union B, it's shown nicely in pink. I need to intersect that with C complement. So now, because I'm doing an intersection, I'm going to, on this same graph, intersect it with C complement. I'm going to draw C complement, and I'm going to draw it in green. So C complement is anything that's outside the C circle. So I'm going to leave the C circle. Well, I'm not putting any new color in the C circle. There is some color in there already, but I'm in green the best I can, shading all around but not going inside the C circle. So there's a fine picture of A union B in pink, C complement written in green. My answer, because it's an intersection, is going to be the regions where I have both colored shadings. I've shaded everything I have to shade, I just need to clean it up. So my answer for number 25 is going to be the regions where I see multiple shadings, and it looks to me like that region here, here, and here. These are the regions that needed to be shaded in my final answer, because these are the regions that have each of the colors shaded. The nice thing on the test, as it's going to be the nice thing here, is that the next 2 problems relate to the 2 problems that I've just done. So problem 26 asked me to find A complement, find for this graph the elements that are in the region defined by A complement intersection B. Well, I know that A complement intersection B is this region right here. So I'm going to transfer the graph of A complement intersection B that I found in problem 24 onto this graph, and every single element that's in that set is going to be part of my answer. And there's only one element, so I didn't have to write so much. My answer to problem 26 is just going to be the set that contains the letter H. When I go to do problem 27, I'm asked to find, for this particular Venn diagram, the elements in the region defined by A union B intersection C complement. And again, if you look at the work that we did for problem 25, we know the regions that are blocked out by A union B intersection C complement. I'm going to transfer these three regions to this graph, and my answer for problem 27 is just going to be the elements that are in those regions. So my answer is going to be the set that contains the numbers 4, 10, and 11. That's all there is. Now 2 word problems, and these are the problems where if you're going to miss, this is where you're going to miss. So let me make a stab at doing this. So a company is considering manufacturing 2 flavors of ice cream. They're considering 2 flavors, bubblegum and boysenberry. In a sample of 120 people, it was found 40 liked bubblegum, 90 liked boysenberry, and 20 liked both. Remember, hopefully you remember, that when we create Venn diagrams to model word problems, we have to know the number of circles that we're going to need. And in this problem, there's 2 kinds of ice cream, so there's going to be 2 circles. And we take kind of 3 steps to fill in the Venn diagrams. The 2 circle Venn diagrams, very specifically, we need to do a first number, a second pair of numbers, and a third number. And the only number that we used in our Venn diagrams that was given in the problem was the first number. And all of the rest of our Venn diagram word problems, that video that was 2.5 hours long, we subtracted to get the numbers for any subsequent step. So first I'm going to get the number that's given to me in the problem. That's the intersection between the 2 parts of my Venn diagram. Then I'm going to subtract a number given in the problem minus the number placed in step 1 to get the numbers in step 2, and then in step 3 we're doing one more subtraction. So let me try to do these steps. I'm going to make my Venn diagram with 2 circles. I'm going to put names to the circles and I'll start filling it in. So 2 circle Venn diagram, and I'm going to name my circles for the names of the ice cream. And I might be lazy, just here write B gum for bubble gum and B berry for boysenberry. I don't necessarily care if you write the whole names out. So there's 2 types of ice cream, and I need to fill in the very, very center number, and that number is going to be the only number that I take from this problem and put in the diagram without subtracting first. And that number is going to be the 20 that liked both types. So that's going to go dead center in my diagram. The next 2 numbers I'm going to get by subtracting the numbers that are given in that list minus the number that I just placed in. I'm going to take the 2 numbers in this list of numbers and subtract out the 20 that I put dead center. These are the next 2 numbers that are going to belong in my diagram. And the first one goes in the rest of the bubblegum circle. There's 40 of the 120 people like the bubblegum ice cream, and the 40 is going to get broken up like this. There's 20 people that like the bubblegum but they didn't like the boysenberry. There's 20 that like the bubblegum and the boysenberry. There's all 40 that like the bubblegum. For this 70, it has to go in the boysenberry circle, and the part of the boysenberry circle left is there. And this gives me 90 people that liked boysenberry. Of the 90 that liked boysenberry, 70 liked the boysenberry, didn't like the bubblegum, 20 liked both flavors. So done with my second step. On to my third step. I get the number that goes outside the diagram And generally we get that number by looking at the initial problem before I get to the wording and take the number that's given, like the total number of people surveyed in this case, minus any number that's already in the circles. The numbers in my circles so far are 20, 20, and 70. And if I add those up, there's 110 in my circles already. So I'm going to take the 120 people that were surveyed and subtract out the 110 that I know what their preferences are. That's going to give me 10 to go outside the circle, and those were 10 that didn't like either the boysenberry or the bubblegum. All right, so now let me answer the question. There's only one question here, so nice. How many liked only boysenberry? Well, of the boysenberry people, there were 90 that liked boysenberry, 20 liked both boysenberry and bubblegum, 70 only liked the boysenberry, didn't like the bubblegum. This is asking for these 70 people. The answer to part B is 70. That's all there is to do for that. And now, last problem on the review, the monster problem of doing a Venn diagram that has gonna need 3 circles, and it's a word problem. So as I look through this problem, it says 150 students were asked which of these 3 teachers they have taken: Clark, Grimmer, or Diaz. Diaz is just recently retired. I should change him, but I didn't. And it talks about how many people have taken each, and then create a Venn diagram to model this information. I'm going to need to create a 3-circle Venn diagram to model the situation, because there are 3 teachers mentioned. And I don't know why I have my name first, but it doesn't matter. When you do these circles, what teacher you put in which circle. So I made a circle for Grimma, Clark, and our psychology teacher, Dr. Diaz. Now, I usually for these, I go 3 of a kind first, 2 of a kind second, 1 of a kind third. It's actually 4 steps, and the 4th step is going to be actually to pluck out this number. So as I go through to fill up this diagram, it's going to take 4 steps. And the first step is I look for, in my list, something that mentions all 3, and that's going to be this. And then the second thing I'm really looking for is 2 of a kind. In this case, the kinds are teachers. So the things in my list that have 2 teachers. Third, I'm going to be looking for the mentions of 1 teacher, and then I'll get the number outside the list. So first number that I put in, it's the only number that goes in without subtracting, and it's going to be the number of students that have taken all 3 of the instructors. And that, what kind of color I have here, that is going to be these 5. So right dead center, I'm going to put the number 5 for the instructors that have taken, the students have taken all 3. These 2 of a kinds are all going to get subtracting the 5 that's already in the circle. So for the 2 of a kinds, which I do second, I take the number that's given and I subtract the number that I already placed in that circle. So the next 3 numbers I'm going to put in are going to go in these 3 spaces. I got those numbers by taking the 2 of a kind numbers and subtracting the number in the center. The numbers 5, 10, and 15 need to go in next. The 5 goes in between the Grimma and the Clark circle, and the part of the region in between the Grimma and the Clark circle that's not filled up is right there, so that 5 is going to go there. The 15, which is going to actually turned into a 10. This 10 is going to go in between the Grimma and the Diaz. There's Grimma, there's Diaz. The open spot between them is there. The last one goes in between the Clark and the Diaz. There's Clark, there's Diaz, there's the open spot, there's 15. So I did exactly what I wanted to do. I filled in the number dead center. That's the only number that goes in without changing. I looked at the 2 of a kinds, any of the in this case, any of the lines that had 2 of the teachers. I subtracted the number from the middle, figured out where they went. Now, I'm going to have to do the other 3 spots. And I kind of in the videos did that a little bit different. So let me just focus on the one teacher at a time. Let's look at the Grimm circle kind of only here. So if I made my Venn diagram up and I only pulled the numbers off the Grimm circle, there's a 5, a 5, and a 10. And I'm going to get this portion of the Grimm circle by looking at the one of a kind, and I'm looking at this number right here. So the number that fills up the Grimm circle needs to be the number to make all these numbers add up to 50. So far in this Grimm circle, there are 20 students being taken into consideration. There needs to be 50. The difference between the 50 students that said that they took Grimm and the 20 that are already in the Grimm circle is going to be the rest of the Grimm circle. So in that region there, I use that one of a kind. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the Clark circle. I'm looking at this to fill in that portion right there. So Grimm, Clark, Diaz. I'm only looking at these numbers, this 5, that 5, and that 15. If I add those numbers up, 5 plus 5 plus 15 equals to 25. The numbers in the Clark circle need to add up to 45. I'm going to take this 45, subtract that 25, and get a 20 for the rest of the Clark circle. Now I'm done with this number, and on this next step I had to get 1, 2, 3 different numbers. I need to pick up that number right there, which is the rest of the Diaz circle. To get the rest of the Diaz circle, I only look at numbers in the Diaz circle. So I have the Grimm circle, the Clark circle, the Diaz circle. In the Diaz circle right now there's a 10, a 5, and a 15. I'm going to add up that 10 plus 5 plus 15. That adds up to 30. I'm going to take the single Diaz number, that 40, subtract that 30, and get 10. That's the rest of the Diaz circle. So down here in the Diaz circle, I'm going to pick up a 10. Got that placed. So I've dealt with every number in this list. I have the 5 taken, all 3 that went in unchanged, the 2 of a kinds that I subtracted the 5 from, the 1 of a kinds that I had to did off a screen one at a time. I need to get the number that goes outside the diagram. To get the number that goes outside the diagram, I need to take into consideration this 150. And what I have to take into consideration is how many students that are already placed. So I'm going to go through and add up all the numbers in my diagram. So 30 plus 5 plus 20 plus 10 plus 5 plus 15 plus 10. So represented so far in this diagram are 95 students. This diagram needs to represent 150 students. The difference between the 150 students that were asked what teacher that they've taken and the 95 that are represented by this diagram gives me 55 students that haven't taken any of those 3 teachers. So outside my diagram is 55. That's the whole diagram. Once we get the diagram, hopefully that makes it the rest of the questions are easy. How many didn't take any of the 3? That's those 55. And then how many have taken both Grimm and Diaz but not Clark? So there's a handful of students that took Grimm and Diaz. Those students right there, those 15 students, those 10 took Grimm and Diaz and not Clark. Those 5 took Grimm and Diaz and Clark. So this is focusing on the students, those 15 students that took Grimm and Diaz, but I don't want to include the ones that took Clark. So of these 15 students that took Grimm and Diaz, I have to exclude those because those also took Clark because they're in the Clark circle. This is only focusing on these 10 students. These 10 students right here took Grimm because they're part of the Grimm circle. They took Diaz because they're part of the Diaz circle. They're outside the Clark circle, so they didn't take Clark. So 10 is going to be the answer there. And that's the rest of the review. There isn't anything else that we need to do. So hopefully you're feeling good about this. We do have the extra practice, in-class practice for you to work on in class. So you're not going to, this isn't the only thing you have to study for the test. But quite honestly, it's enough. If you can do all the problems on this particular practice test, you should be completely fine for our test.